Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Talk Your Shit Sports Podcast. I'm David Bray. We're here with my main man, highlight reel Patrick Valdez.
What's going on, fellas?
We would like for everyone right now to go subscribe to the Talk Your Shit Sports Podcast YouTube channel. You can also find us on Instagram at Talk Your Shit Sports Podcast. You can find us on Facebook at the Talk Your Ish Sports Podcast. You can find us on Anchor, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Again, if you listen to wherever you listen to your podcast, go find us, Talk Your Shit Sports Podcast, Anchor, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Man, we are hitting for a doozy, ladies and gentlemen. This brings me back to my childhood and my love for the game of baseball. So this evening, we welcome my brother, my former teammate. I used to compete against this guy. He's one of the best legendary third basemen in the Southend Baseball and in all of Massachusetts. This guy was legendary. He's on the hot corner.
Let him know.
And the man can move on the base pads. And we gave him the nickname Squeeze because his pops, whenever his pops called the Squeeze, it was always him. So that's why we called him Squeeze. But without further ado, my brother Stephen Lewis is here in the building, guys. And we are not and we just thank you for coming to the show. We really appreciate you. Without further ado, we also have our coach, our mentor, a Southend legend, Southend baseball legend, a Boston leader, known all across this country, the founder and CEO of the Base, our coach, Robert Lewis Jr.
Great to be here, y'all. Great to be here, Pat.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, D, Pat, man, thank you. I mean, I appreciate it. I love being here, man. And it's like y'all said, man. It's just keeping the convos going. It's nothing different, man.
Right.
Let's do it. On the podcast, these brothers can ball. David, they can ball. I just want to be clear. They're not leaving the podcast. These brothers can ball.
Yeah, I Coach, I appreciate you, letting the people know because I'm not just up here just talking my mess. This is my coach that got me my only ring. That's my coach right here.
Yes.
But we're just gonna jump right into it. This is a question for both of you guys. Can you both describe where you guys grew up at and what started your sports journey as a coach and as a player?
Yeah, it started for me back in the day. Many years ago, growing up in East Boston. At that time, we were the first Black family in the Maverick Street housing projects. And as I was growing up, man, we were just out on the hard top, just doing everything, man. From if it was basketball, if it was stickball, and back in the day, we played stickball, and that's what got us to baseball. Played ice hockey, played street hockey. I could skate, would do all of this, but East Boston got me involved in sports, and some of it was my dad taking me to a little league tryout that got me actually excited on my first official team, my first uniform team, and I knew that was something that I wanted to do and continue with. Played sports all through high school. Was lucky to go to a great school at that time, East Boston High, which taught me a lot about pride and about the value of sport, and wanted to apply that, when I was coaching with the Cardinals or the Expos and then the Astros. So it all started, man. It all started on the hard top and Maverick Street housing project, going back a little over 50-something years ago.
That's dope.
And it started me, growing up in the South End. Lincoln Court. There was about 12 of us that lived between Lincoln Court that would come over from Mass Ave. And the only space we had, it was too narrow. The one space where we could play football was too narrow for all 12 of us to get on. There was no hoops around. So just the only thing we could play that was wide enough and big enough was baseball that we could all play at one time. And then that just turns into being able to go play between Lincoln Court, also in Ville Victoria, where in La Gancha and in the Ville, right? And that's straight ahead. It's the walls, the base, and then right back over, right? And start learning some of those basic fundamentals before then becoming part of my first official team that my pops coached with the Cardinals. I think back on it now as a 31-year-old man, that is probably one of the greatest teams I've ever seen. And that was just your neighborhood Little League team. And I will say, shameless plug, 6 championships in a row from 7 to 12.
Man,
right?
You had to bring that up.
Six championships. We won 3. We won 3. We lost 3. But every year from 7 to 12 years old, 6 championships. So, won my first one and then won my last 2. So, that felt good. But it just took off from there.
Now I'm 0-6 against those Cardinals teams, man. 0-6, bro.
Oh man,
two in the regular season and 2 in the playoff every year.
Man.
But Pat, you brought it, man. And that's what it was all about, man. It was just about bringing your game all the time. And you brought your A game, and D Braid brought his A game, man. And that's what it was all about, right? That's what, like, we're older now, so we can talk some shit, but
right.
bringing it. We were bringing it. You know what it was,
man.
Pat and David? They were brothers from the neighborhood, man.
Right.
Brothers from the neighborhood out here balling. And playing this sport and playing it at the highest level.
Right. So for the both of you, why baseball? There's basketball, football, there's everything. It was hockey, as you mentioned. What was it about this game that you loved and that brought the best out of you? What kept you coming back to the field?
A few things for me was, my dad, when I was young, my dad and mom split up at a very young age. But my dad brought me to my Little League tryout. I'll never forget that, because we actually were going into the field the wrong way, and we had to hop a fence. And it was almost cool at 9 years old seeing your dad hop a fence. And we were down there working out, and he was there, and he was like happy and excited. The things that evolved with me was, baseball was that sport that got passed down from a father, to a son. And when my father grew up, in baseball, so much of it was all about the Negro League, right? And his heroes were members of the Negro League. And my heroes at that time were the Red Sox, because they had 3 starters that were black. They had Joe Foy at second, George Scott at first, Reggie Smith played center field. And man, I was just like crazy about the Red Sox. And then as I got older, we played high school. Our high school team was really good. And when I moved to the Southend and Via Victoria, these young dudes asked me if I could coach. So I turned around at 18 and said, sure, I'd coach. Little did I know that at 18 years old, coaching would still be in my blood 43 years later at the age of 60, soon to be 61. And what it did is it impacted me, my son, my wife. So man, baseball was this thing that just like has played one of the most important roles in my life, man. And I wouldn't give it up for anything. I still think it's one of the greatest games ever. And it was like, you want to respect that game. And glad that I had a chance to do it then, but still doing it now.
To segue what he said, father and son, right? He talked about the coach, and it just kind of became natural and came through. And I'll tell you a quick story though. So, he talks about the coaching aspect, and it wasn't just baseball. I'm telling you, when I was 4 years old, 5 years old, old Jim Rice, when it was Ramsey, he ran flag football league there. So I was there with him every Sunday. I was watching him, ref basketball games at Salvation Army Cathedral, right? Mm-hmm. And I remember what took me away from basketball really was, I remember being 6 years old. At that time, I'm outside every day with my friends playing baseball, but I couldn't reach the hoop. I'm a little kid. I couldn't reach the hoop with my jump shot. And, I got frustrated. I'm just mad. I can't reach. But I knew if you gave me a bat and you threw me a ball, I'd be able to hit it.
Right.
So, it's sort of that as a little kid, that failure and success, you take more. You gravitate more towards the successes. And then baseball just kind of became it. And then, just on top of it, man, you just met great people. You met people that became your friends. People, again, that were playing on our teams were from where we lived. So it just became part of our tradition. It became a part of who we are. And it was just this great game that just continued with and to now, as you mentioned, still being a coach, seeing exceptional skill levels now. But the game has changed. The game has changed a lot from when I was a little kid to where it is now. But the best part about it and being successful is you adapt with it, just like anything else.
Super dope.
Pretty dope.
Super dope.
But Coach June, you amazing coach. So give the people the insight on how you got the best out of your players.
I think part of getting the best out of your players is bringing your best every day, right? So, I couldn't say at the time I was a good coach of this. What I did know is I knew, have them practice hard, show them how to play the game at that time, hopefully the right way. Make sure the game was fun, like have fun with the game. But also to me, it was always about positive reinforcement, reminding people you got talent, reminding folks like we're competing against ourselves, right? Never really getting caught up in knowing like, should we know Ronnie Mercado could pitch, but you had to tell everybody, oh, we can hit Ronnie.
Right.
Wait for that fastball, we can hit Ronnie. And then once you start hitting them, then all of a sudden we know that all of a sudden Ronnie might come at you, might challenge you or not. But I think for me, honestly, that was like, showing up, being there, respecting the young folks. I wanted parents also to feel like if their kids played for me, they were playing for a coach who cared for their young folks. So that meant even more to me. And I think what I realized that I knew how to do was to motivate and get the best out of players. And this, let's be real, when you're winning, and this sounds crazy, when you're winning, you almost have to keep that attitude like that you can win. We won before, let's keep going. Because the only other thing would have been not to win. And if we didn't win and the kids had a great game, so be it. But I laugh because, I think of teams when we would lose a game in the season, kids would start crying. It would crack me up. And I would say, we might have lost the game when we played our best game.
Right.
So that was it for me, honestly, trying to bring the best out of young folks, bringing my best all the time, and honestly loving and having fun at the game. And I still do now. Respect this game. It's a great game. And I guess the other thing I would say is don't play favorites. There's no such, don't play favorites. Don't let any one person feel they're better or less than. Like, always go with this team concept. And that's what I love about it. It's about team. And I would say to folks, the most valuable player on your team was the ninth player who always showed up. Because until you had 9, you couldn't play. So I don't know, just make sure everybody felt the value on the team. And that's what I try to do.
And one thing that we mentioned in the show, in one of our prior shows, that I remember I was telling David that I loved about you as a coach, that you treated your starters just like you treated your bench players like you treated your starters. It didn't matter if he was a guy, the last person that got off the bench, you gave that person confidence. You made him believe like he was a superstar. Because I remember seeing what was that team? I think it was David's team when you guys were. I think it was your 15-year-old team. That team was just loaded. Yeah, was that the team with Jimmy and all those guys? Listen, that team was loaded. I remember I would finish my games from East Boston and rush back to Jim Rice to watch you guys play, because that talent from 1 through 9 was just ridiculous.
Angel, Jimmy, JJ, Steph, Ronnie.
We had Louis.
Oh man,
Roger,
Ross,
JB, Jason,
Paulie. Oh,
yeah, right. Listen, that team was loaded, and the way you, like I said, you treated everybody on that team, and it was just like, I was so envious of them, because it was like, damn, you got Junior as your coach. I wanted that, and then when I turned 16, you came over to ADSL, and that's when we'll get into that story. We'll get into that story. But going to Stephen, how was it playing for your father? Was it challenging? Was it one of those?
To be real with you, a lot of folks didn't know he was my pops until
really
later. Kind of going back to everything that you just said. On the field, I didn't call him dad. So on the field, I'd just say coach, or, I joke when I'm say June, but I didn't call him dad. And if I messed up, he benched me, right? I mean, there was no point, ifs, ands, buts about it. And like you said, he never yelled at me, or, I don't want to say yell in a bad sense, but he never yelled at me out of frustration. He'd yell at me as a teammate if I made a mistake, if I was negligent. The same way he would yell at David, or the same way he would yell at Paulie, Jimmy, whomever. And so I wanted to keep it that way. And for me, I would say it actually taught me a lot. Naturally speaking, like you said, our team was loaded. We had guys who just naturally, Ellis by far to this day, one of the greatest athletes I've ever seen in my entire life.
Yo, my hand still hurts.
Effortlessly.
My hand still hurts from catching him.
Listen, man, I seen that man throw a football like 50 yards at 15 years old. Like, this dude was he was one of the greatest athletes, right? We had guys, I wasn't as naturally gifted as them, but it forced me to work harder than everybody, because I never wanted the excuse of anybody to say I only played because he was my father. So I had to make sure I earned my keeps. And again, going back to DB, with his intensity, I had learned that intensity at like 13, 14 from him. And I knew if I had, the biggest balls on the field, if I knew I was the loudest mouth, if I knew every single game I'm losing my voice, right? I had to show up and I had to step out a little bit, right? And there was no excuse at that point why I shouldn't be playing. So it was fun. It was fun, and then, on the rides home, or, back at the house, he loved me a little bit, as a father, but it was never in front of anybody else. Never, ever, ever. And, we'd go back and forth. I'd say, hey, why'd you make this call? I'll never forget, and this is a true story. We're 12 years old. We were playing Bay State, and we were playing Natick. We had a man on third base, like 2 outs, and there was this lefty up. He was like 3 for 3. And I remember my old man moves me in. I'm like, no, keep me back. He says, no, move in. I said, keep me back. I move in. He hits a flare that goes in my glove, just this much. And if I was back, it was an easy one. I think we had like our 2, 3, 4 hitters coming up in, that next inning. And we went back and forth in the car. I'll never forget. We went back and forth in the car.
Steph was hot. Steph was mad.
I was 100%. That was to go to the championship game. But in the field, amongst everybody else, we lost as a team. It was nobody's fault. We lost as a team, and nobody will question that call. As his son, I could question that call in the car, right? But as a teammate, I'm never, by all means.
Oh man. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, this is you can't get this anywhere else besides the Talk Your Shit Sports podcast. I'm telling you now.
Not this insight.
But there's one thing that I would like you guys to touch on, because I think a lot of people don't understand its value, the impact, and exactly what it was for generations. My older brothers played in Southend Baseball. Like, generations and families can talk about their experiences with Southend Baseball at Peters Park, at Carter's, at Derby, at Jim Rice. Can you both just describe and just tell everyone what Southend Baseball was, its impact, its value, and even what it meant to you? And not even just the Southend Baseball, but the Astros as well.
I think when I start to think of Southend Baseball and what you just did, DB, is you talked about place, right? You talked about the field. You talked about the power of Peters Park or Randy back in the day, and then Jim Rice or Jefferson, and so much of it to me was family, and in the field was community. The field was the place that all of a sudden players were coming, their parents and grandparents would show up. And it was one of those few places that the young folks were the center of attention. People came to watch the young folks, at their best. People were cheering for young folks. People were like buying water, doing all this stuff. And to me, it was the best part of community. Because I was coaching young folks, but in my professional life, whenever you seen parents or crowds of people that got together, it was usually in court.
Mm.
And they were in court for young folks. Or the unfortunate part, in the work I was doing, they were at wakes for young people. So we were like crying over caskets for young people, or in court hoping a kid didn't get sentenced. But at the field, it was about the celebration, the talent, and the best of young folks. So man, it meant the world to me. I mean, like, I can coach my son, I can coach you, Pat, I can coach you. And we weren't talking about shootings. We weren't talking about violence. We were just, for those 2 hours of the game and a little bit before after, it's all about community. And I think that's been one of the things that I've carried with me, is about family. And that was Southend Baseball.
Right.
The Astros,
Mm.
whew, the Astros were like, man, like this first family. Like, this is go hard, go home. This is blood, sweat, or tears. This wasn't Southend Baseball. This was us going to the suburbs and others and competing. This is us competing against folks that did not want us in their hometown. This was us competing with folks that did not look like us. And this was us showing folks how to play ball, how to play it with love, how to play it with joy, how to play it with respect, and how to whoop that ass.
Yes, sir.
Astros, baby. On
So
that neck.
in a weird way, we were also, people talk about the racial reckoning happening today. We were part of that racial reckoning because nobody was inviting young Black and Latino folks to their hometown. But you remember, man, they all loved playing against the Astros.
Oh, yeah.
Man, because all they wanted to do is to try to beat us. So that would have made their season so. It was about community, it was about place, and it's about family, man. And you guys, man, honestly, I hope you know, and you guys were part of something special, and you guys have built and left generations of folks that, I'll be honest, we talk about you all the time. And that's what we want our young folks to be, is like, this was a day when folks loved the game. It was about team. Unfortunately, today, so much of it is about the individual.
Right.
Yeah, I think to piggyback off that, Southend Baseball, it's been ingrained in us in a weird way. I mean, he won't say it, so I'll jump out it for him. I mean, he created Southend Baseball, so I know, you think back. No, I mean, because he's not going to say it, but I mean, I'll say it where, his first Southend Baseball league that he created was the 4 projects in the South End. It was Cathedral, 10th City, Castle Square, and Victoria, right? And so that was where Southend Baseball was, right? So, I mean, in a weird way, it's been a part of me. To then the Astros, when, he created the Astros. The Astros was much more because, again, we can't forget the Astros came from like a softball team, men's softball, right? So, I remember, again, going back, being a little kid, watching the men's softball play from all the men from the South End.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So to then being a part of the Astros, I mean, you remember, right? We're all South End boys. If you was a part of the Astros, it was like, that was like being the starter of a football team in Florida, like the #1 high school in Florida. Right. Like you walked around the South End, like like I'm on the Astros.
I'm elite.
Like, are you
elite,
baby? Back then with the gold star, star.
Yes.
Yep. And so it was something, man. It was something. I think really it was just a real representation of toughness, and resilience, man. I think of, be honest, right? If you see where sports is now, right? We didn't have no nice uniforms, man.
Whoa.
We didn't.
Whoa.
Hey, talk to him.
Are we talking about the South End or the Astros?
He's talking his shit, so I go ahead.
No. I'm saying in comparison to today, man, I remember we had some heavy wool jerseys, man. We dropped about 10 pounds in a game. But we didn't have all the extra things, man. Like, teams had individual helmets, individual bats. We had the team helmets, we had the team bats.
Things are
we all grew. we talk about how successful we were on the field, right? If you think about it, we all only lived about 10, 15 minutes away from each other at most. So we were just all neighborhood kids, but what was different is, and what I love about it is we represented one thing. It was a part of our identification at that time, and it was a brotherhood, and you stuck up and stood up for your teammates. You didn't let your teammate down. Right. You could fight with your teammate or your brother, but you guys were good the next day, but you fought on behalf of the team. And it really it taught me really just how to fight. And to this day, like, just be there for your friends. Just be there for your friends, be there for your people. And, they're going to need you, just like on the baseball field one day, be there. Just be there. And so, it means a lot of that to me.
How about you, P? What's Southend Baseball and the Astros and all that mean to you? Like, what was it for you?
What was it for me? We grew up in Lenox. So one thing that stood out for me, like, Southend Baseball saved my life. And the reason why I say that, because I grew up in a project. My project built, like, right next to my apartment was like one of the biggest drug dealers in Lenox. And I remember he would have the big pits just sitting outside his door. So that's how close it could have been for me. Just bumping into him and learning how to be a doughboy and stuff, and doing all that other stuff. But just being away from all that, those 2 hours, and just seeing that positivity, seeing good black, like June. I always looked up to June, because it was always positive energy. And then where we grew up at, we don't see that a lot in black men. And then just seeing June and just me seeing him, I'm like, damn, like, he's always positive. He looks like me, and it just gave me that sense of pride. Okay, there's more to life than Lenox. There's more to life than Lenox, and it just gave, like I said, it saved my life, and especially as I got good, it was like, I can be on the Astros. So being on the Astros got me to travel, played with ADSL with June. And let me just jump into that story. I remember playing in ADSL, and that first round we was trash. We went 0-7. And I forgot, I think Angel, they used to coach the Indians. His brother used to coach us. I forgot his name. And then June came in the second round. And listen, like I said before, I was envious because you guys had June. And I'm like, I never got a chance to play with June. So June came over. I'm like, word. Like, we're going to win a championship. I think our first game we lost. June pulls us to the side. He was like, you see what happened? You guys got talent. You guys are good. But this will never happen again. I'm telling you right now, we're gonna win. And when I tell you guys that we went in and just destroyed every team that we played, and then in the championship game, we went to Belmont. We was down 2 runs. June pulled us to the side, and I think it was the last inning. Pulled us to the side and said, "These guys, we're in their turf. They don't want to see us win. So what are you gonna do? Are you guys gonna lay down, or are you guys gonna show up?" And I remember just hearing that, I came up, I think it was runners in first and second. I hit a triple, and that was a winning run. And I remember this white kid named Billy, hit a home. I think he hit a double, and they brought in the winning run, and that's how I got my first ring, man. But like I said, baseball played a major part of my life, and I want to say that it definitely saved my life.
Lit. Yeah, for me, it was a few things. It gave us something to look forward to every 2 or 3 times a week.
Right.
I think a lot of the times with a lot of my peers, if we didn't have structure, we didn't have something to look forward to celebrate, like to compete. We looked at other things, and obviously that would lead you down the wrong track. But not only the competition piece, yeah, we all grew up in the same neighborhood, but like it was still like you didn't want to walk over here to Cathedral, or like if you're from Tent City, you weren't walking down to Lenox like to play basketball at Carter's or Derby, or like I wasn't going down to Peters Park to hoop. I mean, I wasn't doing that, so I didn't. Even though we lived within like 5 to 10 minutes of each other, I still didn't know a lot of the kids outside of Southend Baseball, outside of my neighborhood. So that gave me the opportunity to learn about other kids who are, who are as equally talented for us to grow. Because like, we all went to school together.
Right.
And that was another thing. It was like, like we all went to these BPS schools, but for some part, I think for the most part, nobody was really hanging out with each other. So that gave me an opportunity to, build my network, build some friends, man. And then I think the biggest thing is like, we didn't get the adrenaline, that rush, the applause from anything else in our lives, but we got it from Southend Baseball. We got it from being on the field, competing in the fifth inning to win a game. We didn't get that anywhere else.
Right.
I mean, I know we used to hoop and play football in the neighborhood, but like there weren't too many people. Like there was like maybe one person watching us. When you go to our games, 30, 40 people, adults.
Right.
Adults, like, come on, like cheering at top of their lungs. It was amazing. It was amazing. Absolutely. And to this day, like, I just, like, I at least once or twice a summer, I go to Fenway Park just to hear the noise. Like, because I just remember the atmosphere. And that's what I love, and that's what I miss, and that's what I love about the game of baseball.
Definitely.
Pat, can I say something, Pat? That was the one year that I think the Astros wanted to kill me, because I remember because we had this team, and that team was loaded. Like, we had Juan Carlos, Manny Delcampo, like that team was loaded. And we were an RBI, man, and they didn't need me. And it was Josh Powell who turned around and told me the coach that he wanted to move. And he says, would you ever consider leaving the Astros and coming to coach with ADSL? And I remember asking him, ADSL, why am I going to do that? Then he said something like, because they didn't win a game the first round. And that like got me excited, because I remember I went to see one of your last games in the first round. I remember saying to Josh, this team is good. They just don't know they're good. And we need to move a few people around and shift the batting order and stuff, and they'll be good. And you guys believe. And, so you talk about that 15-year-old team, you guys were that good, except I think the coach might have let players play where they wanted to play and kind of batted. And once you guys pulled it together, I don't say honestly it was coaching. Like I said, my job is to just remind you guys how talented you are. So, and then I had to go back to Southend the next year because I thought they would fire me if I didn't go back.
Right. I went back with you.
I remember.
Gotta come back home. Gotta come back home.
Right.
That's
like
right.
LeBron.
That's right.
Like LeBron, gotta come back home.
That's right.
Yeah, I had to come back home after that chip. But June, year in, year out, what was your goal for your teams as a coach?
That's interesting. I think one, in a weird way, the prize, right, was always like someone wants to win the championship. For me, I think like it's interesting. You said that the goal for me was that my team loved the game, played the game with love and respect, that they showed up and they played as a team. You said something which I really, really appreciated, but that all these kids could feel like they could play, and that we were going to play them no matter what, and because they were out there. The other thing which I loved about our team is that I felt like the parents loved coming to watch. So I don't know. I think when we pulled this together, you wanted to create a good family. I always we did a balance of, I always drafted young players to go with the veterans, because I learned something that the coaches in Southend didn't do. Most of them would always draft the 11 or 12-year-old, and you only had them for 1 year or two. I used to draft like the 9, 8, 9, and 10s, because you can meld them for 3 to 4 years.
Right.
And that's, I think, for me, which, to be honest, was that goal to go out there, have fun, and compete. winning was great. I'm going to be honest, nothing like winning, but the idea of teaching kids to compete and later on in life, they realize that applies to life as well. Competing on the field and competing off the field. I didn't know that early, but I learned that later. And that was part of, as you evolve as a coach, you want the kids to get the skills to be able to compete in life.
You got squeezed.
I mean, now as I coach, my biggest thing, man, is transparency and sincerity. Transparency and sincerity. You know, I want, for the X's and O's, I want to be one of the most knowledgeable coaches. And, you know, I've been blessed and I'm very appreciative. I've been able to, as a coach, being able to be under the wing of Coach Gambino at Boston College, as well as like Kyle Decker, University of Dayton, where they've showed me a lot of things within the X's and O's, a lot of things to look for, a lot on top of the knowledge that I have. But the sincerity and the transparency comes in where, to go back, where it's kind of beyond baseball. You know, if we look at the numbers, right, and we look at the amount of young folks, they're not really going to play Major League Baseball. Now, there's the talent is there. I've seen plenty of folks that have got drafted, right? But to be able to make a career and have sustainability in the sport is very, very hard and very rare.
Definitely.
And one thing I like to look at, me and my old man, we go back all the time, is if we look at our team, Dave, right, and the amount of players that are on our team and what we're up to now, you know, everything that you're up to, having worked for, you know, Ed Markey and right now grad school, myself working for the base, being a teacher as well at Eastie High, JJ an accountant, Ramon worked for the DA, Paulie's a police officer. You know, I mean,
Jason's a lawyer.
JB's a lawyer. Louis didn't speak any English and he's a teacher, right? You know, but like it was a group. It's wild when you look at, you know, a majority of us that was on that team are doing well as men, right? And so my biggest thing is how do, you know, we've been teaching our young folks too much of this, too much of this, and too much of this. And then once they're 20, 21, they're at the softball field. You know, nothing wrong with that, you know, enjoying yourself, but that's it. And, you know, like y'all said earlier, man, there's life beyond baseball. There's life beyond baseball. So that's where the transparency is. And, you know, when you're transparent, when you're sincere, you get that back from your players. You know, I think of, man, like 2 weeks ago was my girl's birthday, right? And so I threw her a little surprise party. She had no clue. It was my players that helped me. I had 1 hour. It was my players that helped me clean everything out in my house, right? But they wanted to be there. You know, I had a birthday party that she threw for me. On top of everybody that's there, my players were there too, that she had invited.
Wow.
So it becomes family. It becomes love, right? And that is where I feel like when those success stories come, and I kind of, you know, and I tip my cap to my old man there, one thing I felt like y'all kept alluding to is he helped raise y'all as men, in a sense, show that positivity as men. So I don't want to teach you how to hit the ball at a 35-degree launch angle. You know, that's great, and I am, because that's my job, is to teach you those things. But it doesn't stop there. You know, and it's more, who are you going to be afterwards when this game is over? You know, I look back and I tell this story, you know, when I was in high school, my senior year in high school, you know, I led the state in batting average, right? I hit like 5-something in high school. I was waiting for the big D1 school to come. I didn't know about schools, right? I didn't know about grades. I go to a college, I get kicked off the team immediately, right? So I had to figure out what I had to do. I ended up playing men's league, right? Playing Yankee league. And I'll never forget, we had a game in Brighton. I hit a double. I pulled my hammy on the way over to second base. I pulled it. Yeah, it was a rough one. And but I was working 2 jobs at the time. And I said to myself, you know what, man, I'm going to be working. When I get a little bit more time, I'll go back to playing. I'm still waiting for my time. Right? This is 7, 8 years later. That time hasn't come. Life took on. Things happen. You get a new job. You know, you find different interests. I haven't played. I mean, I've done a couple of years of softball, but as far as being able to go and play baseball year in, year out, it hasn't happened, right? At some point. And I didn't know. I pulled my hamstring that one day. I was like, man, next time I'll just be right back. Because my whole life I did it. And then it's gone. It was done. right? So it's my job. I feel like it's my job and my priority to let folks know and provide kids with the tools and the knowledge of being prepared that when that happens, you're ready, so that's my biggest thing.
Just to touch upon that, how did you feel when that happened? Like, what was that feeling? Because I remember when I was playing, I think I was playing Yawkey League or Park League, and I knew, I was like, damn, I can't do this. Because like you said, you're getting older, life is changing. I'm trying to save up for a wedding in a couple of years. So it's like I have to put in some extra hours. So that feeling, I was just like, I remember after a long game, I just sat there and I was like, damn, it's really, this is the end. And it's good that you're teaching, your players that you have to think beyond baseball, because you can easily transition to, if you're going to college, if you're not in college, put your focus in a major that you can, whether it's business, accounting, whatever. I mean, it's good that you're starting them, drill that in their minds right now, because you don't want them to sit down and be like, damn, what am I going to do next?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the truth, man. It's the truth. And going back now professionally at the base, right? You do have young men that walk in, they say, 2, 3, 4 years after high school, damn, Steph, you was right. And instead of saying, you should have listened, what I love what we do is we say, all right, so what are we going to do now? What are we going to do now? Because it's not over. You're here, right?
Right.
We're going to figure something out. But what you don't want, and this is, again, you learn from experience, right? I mean, my whole life, right? My old man said, do your work, get your grades, right? All my teachers said, get your grades, right? And so, like I said, I was waiting for that D1 school, D2 school to call me. I didn't have the grades, right? And I didn't know at the time. Now when you have the young folks, it's again, you're being transparent, you're being sincere, you're being honest. And it's about how do you provide them the opportunity of options? I think that's, that's something I've learned as a man now. It's you're at your best when you have options rather than when you're forced into something. And when you're a kid, you don't know, man. You're 16, 17, 18 years old. You go with the flow, you thinking, you swear you know the world and you haven't figured it out. But, again, it's you speak it enough, you plant that seed, and eventually that seed will sprout. So, that's just pretty much how I go about my business day in, day out as a coach.
Super good.
No, definitely. So let me jump into my next question. So describe what the base is and how it got started.
Yeah, the base, I'd like to say where we have this mindset and methodology of how we use sports and academic towards success. Our mantra is urban talent is American talent. That's what we say. Urban talent is American talent. So it's not just about baseball. It's not just about education. It is like some of the best talent in America are in cities. The difference is it's everybody else that doesn't know that. So we want to make sure we're providing best in class, high quality baseball instruction, training, development, equipment. We want to make sure that we're providing academic and educational awareness, preparation, from SAT, college readiness, the FAFSA, the whole 9 yards, getting folks in and through college. And then how do we make sure that we're spending a lot of time right now around training and development for jobs and careers as well. So at the end of the day, the simplest thing is, we want to create pathways for success. And that's it, pathways for success. But we have made our decision the way we do it. It's through sports. Others do it through arts, music, design, theater, whatever. So my big belief, if you find a passion point that young folks love, set high expectations. So that's why I say you walk in, you see on our wall, go hard or go home. Earn your spot. Preparation, practice, performance. Success lives here. We want to shift that. We don't call our kids, Pat, you hear too many, Dave, you hear too many. We don't call our kids at risk, underserved, disadvantaged. I don't believe in that, right? And what we do is we label our young brothers and sisters as deficits versus assets. So that's our thing. And we've been fortunate enough that we have it here. We have a place in Chicago. We do some satellite work in Indianapolis and Pittsburgh. We're doing work and supporting other urban programs around the country. But my main goal with this is I want to shift the landscape of urban America so our young folks are participating in this 21st century economy. It's not just about jobs in the suburbs. They talk about careers. I want our kids to have them too. So we're not competing with the suburbs because I think we're resilient and we're stronger, tougher, and smarter. But talent is everywhere, Patrick and David. Talent is everywhere. Access and opportunities are. And we want to feel at the base that we're filling them with access and opportunities. And we're surrounding them with folks like Stephen and others that came up through the Astros that actually, a lot of them who went on through school, and graduated. We're doing the same with the girls, but we're all about expectations, man. Set the bar high, let them achieve it. If you set it low, then they achieve it. And that's what I think we've done too often with too many kids in BPS. And I'm not being critical of BPS or the kids, but let's be real. If you're telling the kids you only have to have a 1.6 to play sports, folks, we're not raise the bar. We can expect more from our young brothers and sisters, and they'll achieve that. So that's what we're hoping to do, man, is to get our young folks ready, finish college, get jobs and careers, and be successful, man. And I'm loving it, and we're doing that. I love what Stephen said about you, Pat, but David, your team, your guys. Prior to that, prior to what you guys are doing, I had great baseball teams 30 years ago, 40 years ago, like mostly 30-some years ago. I had great teams, 17, 18 years old. It was good. You know what happened? At the end of the summer, baseball was over. None of them dudes went to college. Most of them dudes are unemployed. But you know what I had? It was a great baseball team. So when I started the base, I had to counter that. I wanted a great baseball team while also developing great talent. So that's what we're focusing on at the base.
And I'll speak a little bit on the back end side, sort of the unspoken stories from him and from my experience, because we're 8 years old now, so I was 23. He started working on it, when I was about 23 or so, 22, 23. And I remember a couple things. I know one of the turning points was when, one of our former teammates, I won't name him, got shot up a bunch of times, like 9, 10 times, right? And I remember he was having a practice at Jim Rice, he said, and this particular teammate came walking down, and he had a limp, he had a cane, and he said, he screamed my father's name, June, right? And wanted to speak to the kids. And I was away in college, I wasn't there. And what he says in the story was, if only I had a place to go, right? And so I remember I came back like a weekend, and my father was saying, like, man, it's messing with my mind, man. Like, this one dude, amazing athlete that was part of, our team, got shot a bunch of times. And what could I have done? What did I do? What did I not do? What did I miss with him? That this was his fate. Luckily he's alive, God willing. But what could I have done and been different? And I remember it played in his head. And I'm listening to him speak out loud, but I didn't think of I didn't think of the base. I didn't think of that. I just like, all right, man, like, next time speak to another kid, deeper or whatever it may be, right? But he always had his mind bigger. And so I remember he kept talking about it for some time, kept talking about opening up a space. It wasn't the base at the time. He didn't know. He was just coming up with names, right? I think he wanted something like, what did you want? Something like the Astros Academy or something like that.
Yeah, something like I was playing off the Astros Academy, or like the University of Miami, the U.
The U.
So I remember he was telling me about it, but he didn't tell me he was gonna do it. So I remember I was home for the weekend in college, in the kitchen eating a bowl of cereal. Just me and my mother. He walks in the door. Hey, what's up? What's going on? He's like, Nate, Nate is my mother. He's like, Nate, I gotta speak with you. I'm like, oh, all right, eat my cereal. And he's like, I quit my job.
Oh shit.
She said, the fuck you did? Like, so I was like, oh.
Wow.
I was like, I ain't leaving. I'm gonna eat this cereal right here, right? But yeah. But he was just like, man, you know, again, he just, and what I appreciate, and again, it's those learning moments. And I think, you know, even as we continue talking, I'm always going to resort back to those learning moments because, you know, when we're talking about the game of baseball, we didn't just stop learning it at 15, 16, 17, 18, right? It was those lessons that are going to teach us our next lesson as we go. And, you know, he bet on himself. He put it all on the line. Put the family on the line, right? Your family financials and all that stuff. You put it on the line. And, you know, it just taught me that. And you learn to appreciate it. You learn to grow. I learned to grow that as a man now. So here we are now. It's like he said, Chicago. And what I'll say about Chicago, too, on top of it, when we did Chicago, we were supposed to open up with a pretty, I don't want to say an affluent program. It was a Black program, but they turned out players, man. I'm talking, they like a factory, man. They turn out some boys. We were supposed to start with them. I remember that first trip. So we were playing all of our games on the South Side. Everybody hears Chicago, they hear the South Side, right? Because the South Side is more populated. But the more isolated part of Chicago that has its issues that really go underneath. But I don't want to say it's a bigger problem because Chicago is really honestly a beautiful place. But with its issues, it's actually the West Side. It's the West Side. And I'll never forget, man, we played them on a Sunday morning at 9 a.m. They only had 8 players. So think about it. A team from Boston was coming down. They only had 8 players. They didn't even have the whole 9. A couple of their guys didn't have cleats. You know, at the top of your head, right? Because you think you the competitive edges and you just want to play ball. You're ready to go. You think, oh man, this ragtag team, man. The field was a mess. But it was just this team that they had heart, man. They loved being out there. And I'll never forget, man, we were on the third base side. It was 9 a.m. game. We're on defense. So I'm sitting on the bench, and there was a park to the right next to us. And this man, he was playing with his daughter in like the monkey bars or something. His daughter had to be like 4 years old. And he went to pick her up and put her in the monkey bars, and his strap was on his waist. And I'm thinking, man, Sunday at 9 a.m., he's with his daughter. He goes pick up and I see it on his waist. I'm like, man, like, where am I? Where am I? And, you know, they were talking about how they can't play at night. We loved our games. I mean, all of us have our stories about Jim Rice at night.
Yeah. Under the lights.
We've had our craziness at Jim Rice. We've had our craziness at Jim Rice. But what they were saying was they can't play.
At all. They can't play at all.
They can't play. We were in this particular neighborhood. It was funny. Every single G in that neighborhood was taken down and spray painted off. So there was a gym in left field. It said, whatever you want to call it, John Doe YM. And they say every time they put up the G, they take it down. They replace the G, it gets taken down immediately. There's no G's in that neighborhood. And, you know, it makes you think, you know, every city has its issues. Every city has its problems. Every person has its problems, and I'll never undermine another person's problems. But we're a little spoiled in Boston, I'll say. And when I seen the kids in Chicago, when you spoke with them, man, and you know, it's something. And I know right then and there was a business plan. We were on our plane back. I see my old man rip it up, and he's like, "We're going to West Side. We're going to West Side. We're going to West Side because it's right, because they need it." And I was just on the phone with them just earlier today, man. And from where they are now, man, it's a blessing, man. But there's still much more work to do, especially for our young Black men. And again, the reason why we do it's not just the baseball. It's to be able to create more men to be able to do what we're doing right now.
Man,
and women.
Talk your shit, Squeeze.
Wow.
Talk your shit, Squeeze. All right, you know, I'm not gonna keep you guys too much longer. We got a few more questions to get through, but you know, thank you so much for all the insight that you've already given our listeners, our followers. you guys have touched on this and throughout the time here on the podcast, and I just want to dive a little bit more in detail into it. So you guys, obviously Squeeze, we both, played on some talented teams, and in June, you played and coached, tons of talented teams. How do you go about building a winning culture, building a team, and ultimately what you're doing now and building this program? June, I know you talked about it with the Cardinals where you were drafting young. Squeeze, you talked about it when you talk about transparency and sincerity. Can you give the people some insight into how you go about building your team, your culture, your program?
I think, David, you hit on it. I think so much is the culture. And to be honest, you got to build the culture, and you want to surround yourself with players that buy into the culture and the methodology, players that, want to be part of a team, players that want to work, that want to show up, that want to practice and do all of that. So I think so much for me is about culture. And I learned that at East Boston High. We never knew how good we were individually because it never had anything to do with us individually. It had everything to do with representing the blue and the gold. You represented your school and your community. And I've always wanted that. And what I love about, and I say the Astros, you talk to the Astros tell stories. We can talk about how good we were on the field, but we tell stories. And, no one's talking about MVP. No one's talking about that. So I think to me is I start with culture. I start with, expectations. And it's about being on time, showing up, working hard, and earning your right to be out there. And this might sound crazy, but to me, love the game. If I can build a culture, we can make it about expectations, and you love the game, we're going to be all right. And why do I say love the game? We all have seen kids who play because the parents force them to, or the older brothers and folks want them out there. I want kids that just want to get out there and love the game and do like we're doing now, then we can tell some great stories. So, but it all begins with culture and expectations, and loving the game. So I've also have seen, Stephen was talking about the player got shot. We all know who that was, right? But it's when we don't turn our back on our brothers, right? And that I had that brother come and meet with our team before we went to a national tournament, because part of that Astros team was built off of his back. Right? It was built off of his back. And he deserved every right to show up and to want to work. That to me is about culture. It wasn't about, hey, look at me, I got shot. It's like, let me tell you what it's like to be an Astro. And that's what he was saying. So I don't know, man, love the game, have expectations, and don't be afraid to build a culture of love, man. And sounds corny to folks, but that's what it's been my whole life.
You got Squeeze.
I'll piggyback a little bit off that. Everything he said, and what I'll just do is I'll be brief and give a couple quick examples. When you look at culture, I think, DB, Pat, we was kind of at the end of a shift in time in baseball, right? More Pat, because you're a couple years older than us, right? Like a college wanted to see you, they kind of had to just go to the game.
Right.
Where DB, we were kind of the beginning of that internet age, where that recruitment started online, right? And it was that in between. A lot of folks, especially in the city, didn't know how to use that and how to work it, right? We all didn't. But now, with technology, going back, there's a lot of individualism. Baseball is an absolute moneymaker for kids, and it's almost an exploitation. The way I view it, it's almost like an exploitation. So I look at it like this.
What do you mean by that? If you tell me this,
so
what do you mean by that?
For instance, there's a showcase every other week, right? So let's put it like this: there could be a kid that lives in the projects whose family doesn't come from too much, but they feel that they got to be at every $200 showcase at the end of the year. They're putting up about a couple grand. And who's to say that kid's going to go anywhere or not? Right? You don't know. I mean, they and if one does, by all means, great for them. But what we also don't understand is baseball has a 17% maximum scholarship, right? It's not like football and basketball. So you still have to come out of pocket at some point. So again, that's where a lot of the individualism comes, because again, it's sort of, this could be my day that I can make it. I could go to D1. Less of the team. So where I look at is I looked on the team, and I'd rather take 12, 15 guys I want to play for a team than individual as well. And it may be backwards in today's age, but I just think there's a pride in being a part of a team, being a part of something. And then so to go to an example, the other day I had a practice for some of my 16-year-olds, and I had 4. Y'all gonna like this. 4 of my old players. That 3 popped up, and 1 they called on FaceTime. So at the base, we have a scholarship program. One of the schools is Assumption University now. So it's Assumption University. It's a Division II school for baseball, and probably one of the best conferences in the country, Northeast 10. We have a scholarship with Assumption that's not athletics, academic. It costs about $57 to go to Assumption. Most kids pay anywhere between $1,500 to $4,000 a year after our scholarship, from $57, right? All 4 of them graduated from Assumption, and they just popped in. They're like, "Hey, we're in the neighborhood. We just want to see, to go back, because we all met at this exact same building."
Yes.
So they met at that building. They all went to Assumption. Some of them didn't get the scholarship, but what they wanted to do was come back. And so, I look at one of the young men. He's working for Bain Capital, right? And in Bain's history, he had the quickest promotion in its history. And they deal with trillions of dollars every year. A kid, Phil, told me about this big job in construction management he just got. We have a young man, Alex, who, for now the Woo Sox, was the Pawtucket Red Sox, now the Woo Sox, the Worcester Red Sox, is the first Black or Hispanic person to work in their front office. In history, the AAA affiliate, the first Black or Hispanic person to work in the front office was him. Assumption College grad, part of the base, right? And then last but not least, a young man, Hugo, who he still works with us part-time on weekends, but Assumption College grad. We also have a scholarship with the school, William James College, which is about it's a psychology and sociology focus, and for a year master's. And if any of our young folks wanted to go into psychology and sociology, you can get your master's completely cost-free. So Hugo said, "You know what? I'm gonna go to school for free. I'm gonna go get this. I'm gonna go get this master's for free." And he was there in the building. So right now he's in the middle. He'll be graduating, I want to say, in May this year. But yeah, he's it was just great to have all 4 all at one time there.
Super lit. So I mean, I want to talk a little bit more about the player development piece, because at some point in our careers as players, I know I definitely thought I was going to go pro at some point. I mean, that was the goal. I mean, you go to practice every day. I mean, you just had that in your mind. I can make the league. I can make the league. I can make the league. June, Steph, I mean, who are some of the players coming at your programs that are, are real prospects, and like how do you push the culture of elite development? Like, hey, if you see a player or two that, okay, this guy can actually take it to the next level, what are you guys doing to mold that, to cultivate that and push that? Like, how are you going about that process?
I'll let Stefan answer that, but I'll say to you, Dave, what's great about what we do, Stefan can do it on the baseball. We have some girls for softball, and we got some dudes for basketball. Those elite ones that I also see are the ones like Hugo, who's now getting his master's degree. Or we see some that are actually going into commercial real estate or financial planning, right? So we have matter of fact, 2 young girls last year and 2 this year that are now fellows at the MFA learning about like cultural and arts. So what I've grown from is Stefan now runs the baseball stuff and he sees that. What I have seen is how are we developing this level of talent that are now ready for careers, because I want to put that same amount of time that Stefan is putting in on developing that to us developing their talent and skill level. So Stefan just talked about a young dude, Nick Cole, who came to our program, was a star in Belmont, came to us, was on the bench, but all of a sudden we invested, we introduced him to business leaders. Now here's a white boy, and we introduced him to business leaders in the financial planning sector who are African American,
Wow.
who are Black. He got his advice and wisdom from 2 brothers that were in financial planning and stuff, and that talked to him about his skills. Now he's at Bain Capital, right? So I think for me, years ago, it was just the sports before we did the base. Now it's the sports that Stefan and folks have. And for us, now it's developing that other. And because I'm saying, how are we successful and talented on and off the field? And so much of what I'm doing now is the off the field work, while Stefan's doing the on the field. And where I do this, Dave and Pat, if you were to walk in the base, I would tell some more stories about baseball, but I actually would have you talking to our young folks about who you are today and your careers and what did it take to get here, because that's where we want our kids to be going, right? And we've been fortunate enough that a couple of kids from our program have made it to MLB. But even when we have those guys, we had one on a call, Stefan will tell you the other night, we want them talking to our young folks about not just the work ethic of making it, but also about life and about training and about also being a good person. So Stefan, what about the on the field stuff?
Hey, on the field, man. We've got some talented players. We got actually one of our kids that just graduated last year. He's on a full scholarship to University of Dayton, so he was a great student. So he got the academic component of it too. But I think he's one of the, I have to speak with their coaches. He's one of the, if not the only kid that got the full vote on that roster. And he's highly thought of. So Chris Piguero, who's over there as well. I mean, we've been blessed to see some guys. We've been blessed to see some guys, and I'll just look at the city as a whole. We've had players that used to play with us that aren't with us now at the moment, but they're playing all over the place. But really, some of the best ball players in the country here in Boston. I mean, there's going to be a first-round draft pick from Boston, and he lives right in Dorchester. So there's a lot of talent in the city with baseball. And our biggest thing is just connecting kids to coaches, kind of going back to the showcase piece. What I do a lot is building relationships. To how do I substitute the showcase for coaches? So building relationships with coaches where that kid doesn't necessarily have to go to a showcase, but the relationship is there and the trust is there as we go. So, the University of Dayton head coach is a Boston boy, Jason King. One of our old former ball players played for him back in the day when he was at Franklin Pierce, Calvin Graves. And, as I mentioned, a good friend of mine, Kyle Decker, is now one of the assistant coaches there, who he'll do anything for us. So, we just have different coaches like them, just using them as an example, that will go out their way to give their word for other coaches as well. And so, I've just found that to be an effective way for communication, but as well as monetary. So kids just don't have to go out paying, because, what's different from, now to then was, the best baseball bat costs $500. The best glove costs $400. That's a $900 just in equipment without your cleats, without anything else. Right. So, it's how do we just start to cut some of the costs down a little bit.
Right, but that was going to be my next question. How do you guys at the base build those relationship with these colleges and these professional scouts?
Like I said, it's building those relationships. It's I'll just go off on this, man. It's a snowball effect. Mm-hmm. So I'll go back to the gentleman Kyle Decker, and the reason why I'm saying is you're going to see sort of the cause and effect. We started a relationship and we have a sponsorship with Franklin Sports, so the band gloves. So I go to a convention and one of the heads of Franklin Sports, Chris Rodet, I see him there. We're talking. He says, hey, I want to introduce you to a guy, Kyle Decker. Boom. We talk 30 seconds. Hey, here's my number. Let's connect at some point. At the time, he was a coach for Harvard. The pandemic hit. He just calls me and says, hey, I'm bored. I'm in the area. I want to work with some guys, right? We connect. He ends up coming to the base every single day from April all the way until he reports his new job at Dayton in September, where we didn't even have to pay him. And I'm talking, he was doing 3-4 hour days. And he was like, I'd rather be here because the culture than any other place where I'm making money because it's just for Johnny and Joey. They just want to swing because their parents bring them.
Yeah.
So then when you look at him and something he did for us last month, he got together about 10 to 13 different college coaches. And what we did was a coaches clinic and a roundtable about diversity in baseball. So, you know, again, the snowball effect is we got Northwestern, we got Princeton, we got Harvard, we got Rochester, right? We were just getting coaches all around. But that just started from one conversation. So when we do, you know, everything that we do, it really just goes off of that networking. And what's different about how we network in comparison to other programs is I'm not curious about Patrick and David, the coach, the scout. I want to know Patrick and David, the men, right? Pat, you just had a son. I'm having a daughter. David, you have a daughter. Let's connect on that because now the conversation will be deeper. Right. And now we can really get to some change rather than me trying to broker kids to you, you know, the one-offs. So I think that's kind of where we've been pretty successful.
The other thing too, what we've done, Pat, is Theo Epstein sits on our advisory board. Sam Kennedy, the president of Red Sox, sits on our advisory board. Our all-star games are at Fenway Park. We go to Chicago, we've sat in Theo Epstein's box, right? Theo actually, you know, made a big commitment to us. So some of our partnerships, as Stephen was saying with the coaches, but we built it with Franklin Sports, where Franklin Sports has a base glove, a batting glove, that they have logo with the base. We have our urban talent where we bring teams from around the country. They design an urban talent glove that they donate. We're going to be next month, we're bringing in someone from Dallas, Texas, coming to the base. He's going to become our new bat sponsor, Mind Bats, right? You know, New Balance and cleats, right? So we've worked hard to build with some of these distinguished companies a brand around culture. They fund us because it's worth the investment and they know what we're doing with these student athletes. So our kids are getting top of the line access to equipment, materials. They'll get from the Red Sox that'll come into it. Besides the pandemic, the Red Sox would show up every year for the holidays. When Alex Cora got hired the first time, a week later, he came to the base. So it's not unusual for us to step and say to have the college coaches or college presidents, but also members of MLB that show up and that are big supporters of the base as well. And we got to work intentionally hard to ensure that they see our kids as these assets and why they're investing in them.
Wow. Yeah. Wow, you guys have heard it here, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, man, you can only get this at the Talk Your Shit Sports Podcast. What you got for him, P?
Yeah. I mean, you both had amazing baseball careers, both, you know, player and as a coach. But what do you want your impact to be for the future, you know, the future players that's coming up, future coaches that have, you know, aspiration to be coaches? What is that impact that you guys want to leave?
I think of a couple of things. I think right behind David is Jackie Robinson. And, you know, when you start to think of Jackie Robinson, not only did Jackie Robinson lead this legacy on the field, today, every major league ballpark honors and recognizes him with their number. But on top of that, what I want to leave behind is part the legacy of Jackie, part the legacy of Hank, you know, Hank Aaron and Willie Mays. These folks went through a struggle to get here. I want this legacy that Major League Baseball is going to look in urban cities the way they do in the Dominican Republic and look for Dominican players and realize there's urban talent here. invest in more Black kids playing the game, invest in marketing and strategy around the love of the game. What I want to leave, and I hope the base will leave, is that you have a fan base, you have a market base, you have talent, not just on the field, for marketing jobs, communication jobs, things of that nature. And what I do want to also leave is how we have created this thing that sports can be a vehicle of academics and education and success. And if we can do that, if we can leave our mark on other programs, that it's bigger than just your season, then I think we've done something. And at the end of the day, I know that to be a fact because I'm on this podcast with both of you and Stefan. So I know it is a fact. I know it is a fact that sports will develop fathers, leaders, and folks who care about their communities because I'm on this podcast with you. That's what we have to remember, not just wins and losses, because unfortunately, after that season, you just go on to the next season, and that's not what we want. Right. So, again, I'm not saying it's the legacy, but I want folks to say from the Cardinals to the Astros to the base and beyond, we did it right. And wow, look at these, unbelievable talent and great young men and now young women that have come out of this program and that they're successful and doing well.
Super lit. Yeah. So, Steph, you want to say a few words on that, or are you good?
Nah. I mean, what he said.
All
I can't follow up after that.
Right. So, we have a few more minutes. So we're still navigating and trying to get back to normal from a very tough 2020 last year and a half, with the pandemic and social unrest and political upheaval. What is it that you guys want to tell players and families, in the cities that you serve, Chicago and Boston, about continuing their passion for the game of baseball? What can they do? What should they be doing during this time? And where can they find you?
I would tell folks, one of the greatest games in the world. One of the greatest games in the world. Look at the history. Look at the history of the Negro Baseball League, but look at the history of Latino baseball, and and just what we have brought to the game. Like, I want folks, Dave, I did an op-ed piece after Major League Baseball took in the Negro Baseball League's numbers, and my op-ed piece is what took you so long. Like, that was it. It was all about what took you so long. What I want folks to realize too is this is a great game to love. It teaches you a lot of skills. It teaches you about life. It teaches you about teamwork. And in the business world and the work world, so much is around team. And also, what you can do is you can invest in a passion point that you love, in something where parents, you can get out there and celebrate, cheer for, and really cheer for not just your child and others. And check us out. We're at The Base, www.thebase.org. Reach out to us. Look at our website. See the work we're doing. But I hope what you'll find when you do, you'll see that we're investing in more than just the sport and the baseball. We're investing in creating great young men and women who play the game, play it right, and respect the game. And we built the culture of belief, love, and hope. And that's what we're all about at The Base. And that's what we'll continue to do.
Awesome. I'm going to take a quick minute and we're going to highlight, this is our Black History Fact, and we've been doing this on every episode, man. I want to highlight the man behind us, legendary baseball player, an even better man, Jackie Robinson. He made his debut with the Brooklyn Dodgers on April 15th in the season of 1947. He was able to break the color barrier in Major League Baseball. He went on to win Rookie of the Year. He went on 2 years later to win an MVP in the National League MVP award. And he played in 6 World Series and won the World Series championship with the Dodgers in 1955. He had to endure some painfully harsh racism, treatment on and off the field. The conditions were terrible, but he definitely did it with grace, and he did it for us. So we thank him. We salute his journey. And we always want to highlight the journeys of those who came before us. I know we got like 2 or 3 minutes left, but June, Steph, we're gonna talk a little shit before we go. How are you feeling about the Red Sox rehiring Cora after the whole scandal? Put you on the spot. Let's go.
Okay, so my line here is I'm going to say great hire. Great hire.
Great hire.
He got punished. He got punished. He took his time. He shut his mouth, and he's back in the game. So I think it's great for the Red Sox. I think it's great for baseball, and I'm happy that he's our manager at the Red Sox.
Squeeze.
He took it in the chin. He's back.
He took it in the chin. He's back.
Listen, man. He got the World Series. I mean, he had a little funky year too. We just gonna forget that year happened.
Right.
But he's back. He's back, and especially with the switching of management and really rebuilding the roster, I think he's the right man for the job right now.
What about you, P?
I mean, I think Cora, he's a baseball guy. He knows he knows the game, and I think there was no other coach that we can go out and hire. I think he was the best, best pick that we can possibly have, But I like baseball. I mean, I like him as a baseball coach because he knows the game. He really knows his game.
I think he's a decent coach. I do think this was definitely a black eye for baseball and just for everyone involved. I can't support it. I get it. In order to win and have a competitive advantage, everyone has innovative ways of trying to win. I just didn't think it was necessary at that. Obviously, at that level, I mean, all stakes are on the line. Everyone's feeding their families, but you also destroyed some people's careers in their futures off of that too. So I can't let that slide, man. Real quick, why'd they trade Mookie Betts? He's a champion, MVP. Why'd they trade Mookie? June, Squeeze, why'd they trade Mookie?
I don't think they thought they could sign him. And I thought they thought he would leave and they would get nothing for it. But listen, what I'm happy for is Mookie won a World Series, one of the best players in baseball. I think when the Red Sox look back, they may not admit it, but come on, there's big regrets. My big thing is don't let it happen again. Re-sign Jackie.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the Mookie part, the reports went out from what they offered him. And he ended up getting more after the pandemic. So imagine the pandemic didn't hit, how much more money he would have gotten with the Dodgers, right?
Right.
So it comes to show, the gut feeling the Red Sox at that time was right. They put the offer, it was like 300 million or something like that. And he wanted more. So you trade him, you get what you can in return. I mean, I'm a huge Mookie fan. But when you look at the Red Sox, I mean, their hunch was right. Because what did he sign now for? About like 330, something like that. Yeah. After the pandemic, so before the pandemic, he could have been pushing close to 4.
Oh man, I wish he would have got the 4. I was rooting for it. I was rooting for it. I was like, come on, 400 million, let's get it, baby.
Listen. When you have the best play, arguably the best player in the major leagues, you keep that guy. You see what the Angels did with Trout. Give him the house.
That's right.
Give him the house. You don't trade him away. I mean, and he's young. It's not like he's in the back end of his career. Like, keep him. Give him the house. Give him anything that he wants. He's that good of a player. To me, he's the best player in the major leagues. So, I mean, I don't know. Red Sox, you got to
do better, Red Sox.
You got to do better.
Last but not least, man, we're going to close it out with this. June, Steph, Tom Brady, Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Serena Williams, Mayweather, Hank Aaron, the likes. Who's your GOAT? Greatest athlete of all time?
Bill Russell.
Come on, June.
Bill Russell.
Athlete of all time.
Bill Russell.
Billy.
11 rings, NCAA Olympic champion. No, but let's be real. If you're going to look and compare, folks, because what they compare Tom Brady, they don't compare talent. They compare championship.
Ring, yep.
That's all they do, right? Because if it was talent, he's not the most talented.
Right.
He won the most championships. So if you want to say talent and championship, how does anybody compare against Bill Russell in winning the NCAAs and the Olympic champions? The dude got enough rings.
Yeah, he got like 11.
But let's even go back to NCAA and the Olympics. Nobody,
it's 13.
nobody has done what he's done. So if you say the GOAT and it's about championships, Bill Russell. If you want to say about being the most dominant changing athlete in history, it was Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan changed sports, changed marketing, changed branding, and just changed the way that sports is looked at. And every white kid in America wanted to be like Mike.
I wanna be like Mike. What you got, Squeeze?
I'm gonna give you a hot pick.
Come on, man.
I'm always torn.
All right.
I'm always torn. And it's been the topic recently what folks have been talking about. Athletically.
Greatest of all time.
Serena.
Of all time. Okay.
Serena.
Okay. Yeah.
Because what's different is with tennis, you're by yourself.
I was gonna say that.
You're on the island. You have to play defense and offense. And you're on an island by yourself. There's no coach that's going to help you adjust in the middle of the game. It's your game plan that you're going in, and that's what you got. Now, on the flip side, and this is where I'm always torn, is LeBron James. Because I feel like in 2021, the word athlete has changed to now what you do on the court, but who are you? And sort of that responsibility as an athlete now. And I mean, when we talk about LeBron James activism and all that stuff, I mean, listen, the man's breaking records. He's playing better at 36 years old, 18 seasons in. We could talk about how the NBA changed and whatnot, but he's just a physical specimen who is playing. Everybody thought this was going to be on his decline when you think back when he was, in high school. He's playing better now than ever, but everything he's doing off of the court, everything he represents off the court as well. Sort of that responsibility and that role model mentorship from films to schools to I mean, this man is just doing all types of other things. So I think if you incorporate it all as well, I gotta go LBJ.
Super lit. What you got, P?
I'm gonna piggyback off Stephen. If we're talking about athletes, we're gonna have Serena. I mean, Serena's left on the island by herself. She's been doing this since she was a teenager, just dominating, and she's been dominating for years. Now I feel like she's met her match because she's older in the back end, with going against, the homie Naomi over there. Naomi's a beast. Naomi's a beast. She's a problem. But I would have to give it to Serena, man. Like, she's been holding it down for years. And then I'm on the flip side too with Mayweather too, because to carry that
15-1-0. Yeah, 51-0.
That's kind of hard in boxing.
It is. It is. I'm a diehard Kobe fan. That's my guy. But he's not one. But I think for me, Deion Sanders is gonna have to be up there in the conversation.
Prime time.
For what he did, with the Braves and what he did with the Braves, the Reds, the Cowboys, the Redskins, the Ravens, the 49ers. He just you talk about a player who immediately changed the culture for each team and raised their level of expectation immediately was Deion. And I think he helped the Braves win the World Series or get to the World Series.
Yep. That was 94, the 94 World Series?
I think so, man. So and just to see him do that, go back and forth at that high level, man, and to build off what Michael was doing in terms of marketing and branding and just changing the whole and bringing all that swag to it. I mean, I got to salute Prime Time, man. I really got to salute Prime Time. Well, thank you guys so much. Prime Time, baby. Deion, lockdown corner, Hall of Famer. Let's go get it.
The real island.
IP. Do your thing with the what the fuck moment.
Now, my what the fuck moment of the week was everybody's seen it. That dunk. The Anthony Edwards dunk, like it was ridiculous. Like I couldn't believe.
Oh,
Like
man.
I've been talking about this kid since his college days because he was a crazy athlete in college. He was pro ready his freshman year. He only stayed 1 year in Georgia. He's now getting to the swing of things in the NBA. But that Anthony Edwards dunk, man, it was ridiculous.
All right, this is the last thing we got for you guys, man. So every episode, we leave the people with an inspirational, something we want the folks to take away from this episode from you. Just a lasting impact one last time. So we'll go around, everyone give something for the people. P, I'm gonna start off with you.
My quote is, it's hard to be a person who never gives up. So never give up. Like if you're ever feeling down and if you ever feel like giving up, just know that adversity is a part of life. It helps you. It builds character. Like you need to go through those ups and downs so you can appreciate those wins. So never give up. Never say, oh man, I don't want to do this. Like it's a part of. Life is giving up and hurdles and all that stuff is a part of your maturing as a man, as a human being in this world. But just never giving up.
Yeah. What you got, Coach?
I think a couple of things that resonates with me is always pay it forward. Just always pay it forward. And life is about you'll be remembered by your actions, not by your words. And live between those dashes. Because when that day comes, people are going to talk about who you are, what you've done. And you just want people to say, if anything, you're a great person, great man, and you did things right. So just pay it forward and just live your life and just have values, man.
Squeeze.
I drew some inspiration actually from JB in one of the earlier episodes. So I'm gonna quote Hov right now. Hey, I gotta go with it. But honestly, it's a true story. Well, he said, man, one day you're up, next day you're down. As long as you stay the same, it'll come back around. And I just think, man, like you're gonna go through ups and downs in this world. You gotta weather the storm, man. Don't conform, be you. And one thing that, again, when we go with the sports, right? We're talking baseball. We love baseball, but we didn't let baseball be us. Just stand on your morals, stand on what you believe in, and you'll be all right.
Super lit. All right, folks. Have fun with it. Really find the joy in the things that you're doing. Don't anything that you're doing should be a labor of love. It should really bring you joy. It should bring your family joy. It should provide opportunities for not only you but for others as well. So have fun with it. Bring that energy every day to whatever you're doing and keep it going. It should be infectious. Other people should see what you're doing and want to do it. Life is hard, but it is what we make it. So stand on it, have fun, create your cultures, don't give up and really take it to the next level. I want to thank you guys for coming on the Talk Your Shit Sports Podcast. We thank you. We honor you. Your journeys are important. They definitely, your journey has definitely impacted, not only myself and Patrick, but hundreds and thousands of kids all across this country. Please continue to do what you do. We appreciate you. We love you. We support you. If you got any other players, staff that have, and want to jump on the podcast and talk their shit and share their journey, please send them over to us. But we just salute you guys and we appreciate you. The city owes you guys a debt of gratitude. And if you don't get it, we're going to give it to you on this show. So thank you so much. You guys can find us on the Talk Your Shit Sport Podcast YouTube channel to watch this episode. Subscribe, tell your friends, tell your family. Hit us up on IG at the Talk Your Shit Sports Podcast. On Facebook, the Talk Your Ish Sports Podcast. You can find us on Anchor, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Again, you can find us on Anchor, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. We thank everyone for locking in, and please stay tuned for next week's episode because we got a Boston, but we definitely got a Massachusetts hoop legend coming at you. So stay tuned. All right, everyone. Have a good night.
Love it.
Thank you.